What is up, YouTube? Today we're back with another Etheria restart video, and I want to quickly go over the SS1 seasonal balance adjustments following the close of the Summit Arena season for Etheria. And there's some really big changes that I want to point out that think people are actually overlooking that we talked about on the stream. And I think it's really important to mention these things, in a really short form video. So before we start, I do want to thank Etheria for sponsoring today's video, but let's get right into the nitty gritty of things. Now, the number one thing that you want to see is Hellkit is going to be getting a 30% damage boost on his skills, which overall is, very good. And Rosa is going to have ignore effect resistance. So basically, she's going to be able to land Bladeheart Bloom, definitely afflict the target. I interpret this as it will ignore effect resistance, meaning that it will not be subject to, 10% resist, anything like that. So overall consistency, very good. She's gonna be, much better if you're already using her for things like Aurora or things like Doki. Particularly in Cage Rumble, it's gonna really, really help with getting that 3K score if you haven't already in the past. Now, Tsukiyo Mi is a really, really big one, and I really like this change because I am someone that uses Tsukiyo Mi a lot, and she's going to be reducing the cooldown of skills for all allies and shells, including herself, um, which is huge, right? Now, why is this a big deal? The reason why this is a big deal is because it means that her S3 is going to be one turn shorter cooldown. Not only that, it's going to help you cycle like crazy because one of the main weaknesses that Tsukiyo had was that when she gets her S3 off in the first turn, that's it. She has no more gas. She offers nothing else in the match, right? But when you play that kind of control setup and you have Tsukiyo as that opener for that tempo, you push, and now you have that, skill cooldown reset for the whole team, including herself, which helps with her tempo later in like the second, third, fourth rotation, so on and so forth. So that is a really, really good change from Etheria's end. Now, Borgne, he's getting a 30% damage increase and also a 40% increase in healing. Now, honestly, I don't think this is a huge change. I mean, it is in terms of damage, and this will be beneficial for like the 5 to 10 players on ladder who play Borgne. But outside of those players, I mean, we're not really going to be, I'm not rushing to build Borgne by any means. So I think it's still, it's going to be just helping with consistency. But dispelling 2 buffs is going to be pretty cool. It's going to be pretty impactful. But again, I don't think it's going to really increase his playability per se. That's just my opinion. Now, Xiada is really big, man. She is going to be getting like basically a built-in bloodbath. She's getting a 15% damage reduction just straight up, which is just, I feel like it's just insane because if you pair this with bloodbath, now you just straight up can't kill her. Now, I don't know if like Bloodbath with her passive is going to stack on top of each other. There is no mention of like, the strongest form of mitigation applies in that regard when you pair Bloodbath with this passive. So we're going to have to test it when she gets buffed, but this is a pretty significant change. And I think if you already have invested in your Xiada early on to farm Doki and stuff, and you have lattices in her, I mean, this is going to be amazing for you, right? Being able to have that built-in Bloodbath. So you could either go for something like even more damage, or you can stack the Bloodbath along with her damage reduction passive, right? So that's huge. Now, Nahor is pretty big, right? So he has a unfortunately the strip is single target, right? And it's now going to freeze and inflict block for 1 turn. Now, to me, I feel like it's still not significant enough. I think they needed to buff him where this strip was actually AoE, right? If this was AoE, I think that's what would make him an insane fucking unit, almost maybe like too broken, I might say, right? If it was AoE. So that's my one gripe I have with Nahor, and that's why I haven't invested in him. But his S3 overall is, looks like a pretty good change where he's gonna be increasing or inflicting defense down and res down, and also having freeze, right? So he's basically getting the whole package. If you have a strip, he's going to work as that hard CC, and he can set up for, like a revelation spam or, some type of just straight DPS, right? Which I think is very good if you compare it with a strip. So overall, I might invest in Nahor now, but we'll just have to see. Now, Ninfoniel is going to be just overall consistency, I think, or she's not going to cleanse 2 debuffs from each ally when she presses S2, which overall just, it should have been there from the beginning, right? So that she can work as like a pseudo cleanser with a, as an enabler and enchanter with the attack buff and the bulwark. So overall, looks like consistency for PvE as well. So very, very good change. Now, personally, I think the winner of the patch is probably Lilith, right? Lilith is going to be dealing additional instance of damage equal to 25% of the main target's max HP, And not only that, she'll also do an additional 25% of the afflicted unit's max HP to the target. So the way that I interpret this, and again, we're gonna have to wait until it's actually in game, but why does it look like she's getting like a 50% damage amp for free? Now, obviously, it's not going to be exactly 50 because it is HP scaling dependent, but basically on paper, it's going to be 25 here and then another 25, right? So I think that is going to be very significant. And all the turn 2 players right now that play versus Lilith on ladder in Summit Arena, like they're already like it's already a 4-span when the Lilith comes out on the 4-5. So this is just going to make that even worse. But Lilith definitely seems like really strong because most builds are like minimum 40k HP with a bunch of effect accuracy. So because her damage is scaling based off of like her HP as well, I mean, this is going to be insane, right? So I think she's definitely the winner of the patch. Now, Celince, okay, Celince now, instead of getting her berries at the end of her turn, she's going to be getting berries at the start of the battle, right? 30% of her max HP. And obviously, she is now going to have attack down and crit down with the forgetfulness on S3. Now, I think a lot of people would just look at this and they're like, oh wow, like Celince is going to get attack down, crit rate down, forgetfulness, aka seal. Oh, Pog, right? But she provides shield to all allies at the start of the turn. What does that mean? Freya is going to have so much more value when you pair with Celince that has the barrier, that also has the bulwark, right? You're going to be getting a bunch of extra percentages in combat readiness at the start of the battle with Freya's passive. So this is actually a really significant change, and I think people should not overlook this because if you are a revelation spammer and you have like bulwark and also Celince on your board, you're gonna have so much extra speed at the start where you can outspeed these fucking lilies, these plumes, these Tsukiyos. I mean, this is really significant for cleavers. Okay, I can't stress this enough, and I don't think that many people have covered this topic at hand. Right now, Hoyan overall damage increase for consistency. I love that. Yelli increased damage. Obviously, I think this is so that because it's a global launch, they want to push the Yelli. There's a new skin for her. Obviously, they don't want to nerf her when they're dropping a new skin for her, right? So this is just more incentive to actually spend for her Sakura Blossom skin, which I definitely will be getting and debuting as well. And now the SR units are kind of insignificant, I would say. Sutomu is kind of whatever. I think his base stats are already like no one's gonna build him because they got a base stat increase. Keep that shit hidden. Nell, however, right? She's getting a 7-speed increase, which goes to 123 at 6 stars. That is pretty significant. I think people are overlooking this because if they don't have Lily, obviously you get the LD selector when we had the 7-day login event. But that aside, having a 7-speed increase on Nell is actually very significant if you're trying to use her for tempo in a more budget team or like a free-to-play team. So this is going to be very good if you are, a person that's starting Etheria during the global launch. This is going to be very big for you, right? Because if you happen to pull Nell as an SR, you are going to be able to use her and you're going to get way more dividends, way more return on investment for your evolution lattices because of the fact that she has higher base speed. So it's going to help her leverage, Swift Rush, Swift Raid, Swift Smite even better, right? Now, Victor, keep that shit hidden. He got nerfed to the ground from like Project Alpha or whatever, like the start of the starting first couple launches of the open beta. So this is, or closed beta rather, this is not going to work. Rin is now going to have a 100% chance to inflict taunt for 1 turn and attack down, which is really good. Overall, just helps her with consistency in landing her S3 to taunt and land attack down, right? Too many times where you just straight up miss it because there's a 25% chance that it doesn't hit, because most of the time you're not going to have enough effect accuracy when you also want to have like some pseudo damage built in. Maybe you want to have like a crit chance with revelation plus defense right side, and you only have like effect accuracy at like around 100 or even less. This is gonna help with the consistency overall, right? Now, Rin the Unbowed here on revelation, this is basically just increasing her damage slightly, right? She's getting a 20% damage amp and on her S2, and also a 0.1% damage amp on her percentage damage. So again, I don't think it's going to make her, that much more playable. I think a lot of players on ladder already have her as like a pocket pick, as like a speed contester, and I think she'll just do her job even better with having a little bit of a damage amp. But she does require some pretty good gear, so I don't think I would personally suggest it if you are thinking about it. But she's an SR, right? So it's a really low investment. Kazami and Kazuyo, having the cooldown of all targets animus from 1 to 2 turns is actually pretty significant because that's a 2-turn reset, right? A 2-turn reset is massive, right? 2 rotations where they can't press their buttons is massive for Kazami Kazuyo, so this is definitely going to be a pocket pick in Summon Arena. And reducing all cooldowns of allies and shells, including herself, by 1 turn, applying speed up and accuracy up. Now, for this, I personally do not have Kazami built for PvP, but I do have her built for Cage Rumble and other areas of PvE, especially like Ethernet and Rally and stuff like that. This is going to help with her consistency for sure, and making her way more viable, without a doubt. Now, Kazuyo is going to be a really big nerf, right? Her sleep now is from 2 turns down to 1 turn, and basically you don't really get to abuse her S1 anymore, but I do think that she's still going to be really strong because you're usually pairing her with a Codex of Magic. So regardless, I think Kazuyo, when you need that hard CC, it's still going to be really strong. But the 2 to 1 turn is a pretty big gut in her kit. But honestly, even as a cleave control player, it was very needed. That shit was broken. Okay. Now, RC77, they have also changed his S3 from 4 turns to 3 turns, so that it lines up with Revelation much better. So that overall is a very big W change from Etheria. Now, the shells, what are the main changes, right? Alicorn. Alicorn now dispels 2 to 3 debuffs, which is, again, pretty significant because a lot of times when people do run Alicorn on cleansers like a Lingluo, right, like a Sanya, right, people can just overload them with debuffs, right, from, you know, if you can stack like block, anti-heal, sleep, stun, dot damage, whatever, right? Now, because if there's only 3 debuffs, they are going to be able to get that extra cleanse, right? And obviously there is an increase of effect resistance for 25% if they do get that cleanse, right? So overall, I think this is going to be, you know, going to helping with the consistency overall. I think we might see a little bit of a rise of Alicorn again because a lot of people are already heavily invested in Nico Nana from the start of the game. But overall, this is pretty good because all the new players coming into the game from the global launch are going to be able to get better utility out of Alicorn as they'll be making their way into Inferno Nico Nana as one of the more, you know, premier like starting shell drop runs that you really kind of grind for, right? And White Fang, I think overall they're doing a slight damage amp on them on White Fang, which is overall very good. Again, I think it ties into the fact that Nico Nana is, you know, going to be the premier shell drop that people from the global launch are going to be farming. So overall, this is going to help with, you know, meeting certain damage requirements in the early game, especially. Now, Halloween overall, 80 to 100% chance to reduce cooldown. I mean, this is how it should have been from day one. It should have been 80. It should always have been 100. So good change overall. Codex of Magic, another very big change. In PvP modes, after being affected by Codex of Magic, skills that did not go on cooldown will have their maximum cooldown permanently increased by 1 turn. So what does this mean? Basically, envision you have Opal. Opal's on Codex, you rip the S3, your S2 is not on cooldown, right? It's going to bump your cooldown on S2 to 1 turn CD, right? 1 turn cooldown, but your S3 will still be available. So I don't think this is actually going to be a pretty, like, I don't think this is going to be a very significant change when you're picking Codex on a control or a debuffer and you need to jam that S3 twice. That's not going to impact you whatsoever. But if you do have Codex on another character where you need that S2 sometimes in certain situations, that's going to be a little bit more problematic. And I think this is more so to apply towards like these stall comps with, like, you know, Veronica, where it's kind of played at like the higher level where they play like Codex and they can just like stall you out in the games. So I think that's kind of what this change is mainly targeting. I'm not 100% sure, but I can't think of any other reason why they would make a change like this, apart from trying to balance the fact that people were abusing the stall mode in some RTA formats in Summit Arena, right? And, you know, they also saw it in like tournaments and stuff. So, you know, maybe that's some feedback that the higher level RTA community had mentioned, I assume. And I mean, the arena effect, I mean, it doesn't really matter. Like, this is just changing like the the overall like cumulative actions where it applies at like basically like frenzy, right? If you come from E7. So it's not really, you know, that big of a deal, I think. But overall, like I said, I'm just gonna summarize. Lilith, winner of the patch. Celince, OP with Freya. Kazuyo, absolutely gutted, right? Ninfoniel, cleanse on S2 now, very good. And Xiada has Bloodbath now, which is kind of insane. Tsukiyo Mi has turn reset or cooldown reset on the shells and the skills. So again, another very big change. But that's going to be it. I wanted to make this nice, and I guess it wasn't really that short of a video, but I think it was a very needed video for more higher level insight into why some of the changes were made the way they were. And if you guys did enjoy and you did find this useful, please drop a like and comment for the algorithm. And before I go, thank you to Etheria for sponsoring today's video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care. Bye.